Where's Senator Beck? We are live and John is back. So John, walk us on this
Okay.
really fast.
I'm not sure that it is posted yet, but before it's posted, I could actually just tell you what all of my
Okay.
sections do if that is helpful. So sections 23 and 24 are updating the base and the weights. So the base reflects the figure that Ed represented and the weight we're using are those from Senate Education. So that's what you have for those pieces. That's your interest in the foundation formula.
John, what draft number is going to be?
It'll be 2.1. Yep. Section 25 is your contingent CTE weight. So it's adding in that 1.0 weight for your CTE. Section 26 is just informing changes. Section 26A is adding in your EOP transition. So that's what we were talking about before, is having that 5-year transition payment side as well. So you now have that in addition to your tax rate transition. Sections 27 through 29 are changes. Section 30 is your budget language and contains just a small update to say that your budget would include both the uniform homestead and non-homestead rate. I had to make a number change throughout the draft to reflect the removal of the property classifications, right? I needed to pick up the relevant rates. Section 31 is just sets of reports consistent with Senate Education. Section 32 is your supplemental district spending reserve consistent with Senate Education. So it contains that once it's posted.
It's not up yet.
Okay.
It's still being.
Yeah, it goes. Yeah, let's. So,
I will come back. I'm just giving that review until it comes online. That's all. Sections 33 and 34 consistent with Senate Education. Section 35 is delaying the Ed Fund Advisory Committee. This was the request that the Department of Tax had, if you recall, saying that they're doing this work in an area of ongoing live conversation in the legislature, so it would be premature to start that. Section 36 is updating your definition of supplemental district spending to pick up that piece we talked about before. You guys were asking for the 10% to be 10% of base times long-term membership as against weighted long-term membership. So there's that change in that section, and I see it's posted in, so I will.
You start from the beginning.
For sure. Perfect. I can't start from the beginning of the draft. I can start from the beginning of my sections, but
That's fine.
section 23.
We've already, we've been through the appraisal sections that.
The first section is just to call out our Beth's sections, and she is in
Yeah.
the Zoom. If
Wait, so which section 23 starts on what page, John?
just a second. That is on page 53.
We haven't made any changes to that sections, right?
No, because we haven't had the opportunity.
it's 53.
Yes.
You don't.
Draft 2.1, page 53. You're looking at your definitions for your foundation formula, your chapter in Title 16 dedicated to state funding and public education. What you see here is the updated base amount, that 14,541. Section 24 is your sets of weights. This is exactly the same section as came from Senate Education, so no changes here. Includes your EL, distinguishing between proficiency levels and newcomer's life. You can see you're identifying sparsity for purposes of the small school weight, and I don't know how detailed you guys want me to
What page are you on right now?
This is on page 57.
57, okay.
Then this is consistent with Senate Education, so I don't know that I need to.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Just wanted to-
Wait, you're not doing the new things that these guys wanted?
The request I had was just to do what was in Senate Education. There's another
What are
request.
the things?
The CTE weight, did you guys want that?
Oh, that will be, so we'll have a contingent effective section that's next. Yep. So this is consistent with Senate Ed, and we'll see in the next section. We're on page 62.
Yeah.
It's section 25. This would add in your CTE pupils. So you get your pupil count of CTE pupils, and then using full-time equivalent counts list for each school district the number of CTE pupils. And those would each receive, the school district will receive weighting amount of 1.0 for each of those FTE CTEs. Yep. which was the request as I understood it earlier.
Does the language that the education committee put in about St. Johnsbury Academy and
That's
Linden
all. The related to
getting to
tuitioning,
charge whatever they want?
the tuitioning notwithstanding language has been pulled with the addition of the CT.
Well, thank goodness for that, at least.
I asked them to do it.
Oh,
Thanks, Scott. That's
Oh,
very
generous.
Let's
Scott.
go.
You will.
We will have a prayer service after.
So section 26 is consistent with what you've seen before. This is conforming changes, so nothing new here. 26A, which is page 66. This is your education opportunity payments transition. I do see the semicolon. I tried to fix this before I came, but my laptop froze a second time, so that's possible. But obviously we can fix things in editing. This is the concept of the EOP transition that we talked about before, except aligning the timing with the timing that you had for the tax rate transition, right? So across 5 years, you would get to that standard EOP. Sections 27 through 29 are conforming changes, and these are consistent with what you've seen before. So nothing new in these sections. And I'm sorry that I'm going so fast.
I think everybody appreciates that because
Yep.
I don't think anyone wants to be sitting here till 7 o'clock or sitting in their car waiting.
I sure do. Section 30 is your budget.
As long as he has chocolate.
And the thing I was calling out before is just that, we couldn't reference the statewide rate because you've removed the classification. So we're just calling in, pulling the non-homestead rate. So in your budget vote, you can see
Okay,
both rates. But not a substantive change, just providing that information to the voter. Section 31 repeals that you've seen before. Section 32, this is the same supplemental district spending reserve that we've talked about before, includes that transfer to the school construction aid special fund, so consistent with the House. Sections 33 and 34, these are reports that have been in here, so nothing new. Section 35 is something new here. You'll recall that, and I mentioned this in my overview before, the tax department had requested delaying the start of this fund advisory committee, just given everything that's going on. 36 is updates to Title 32. So these are your definitions for supplemental district spending and the taxes that you're imposing to raise the statewide education taxes. So the real change that you see here is, and I am on page 79, line 7, shall approve in excess of 10%. That used to say 10% of EOP, and now says the product of the base amount and the school district's long-term membership. So this is not weighted like EOP, is the cap determined based on the actual student count. Section 37, there are a number of changes here. Pretty simple to summarize though. Previously, this is where we had built in the property classifications, right? So now that table has been removed, and we say statewide education tax imposed on all non-homestead and homestead property at a uniform tax rate for non-homestead, uniform tax rate for homestead. We don't specify what the relationship is. Those are set sufficient to cover expenditure from the ed fund. Other than that, supplemental district spending after accounting for available revenues. Those would be set each year. The remainder is honestly conforming changes throughout this section. So I'm just going to jump to the December 1 letter, which is section 32. And I can give you the page number just a second, 74. Oh, I'm sorry. I can't read my own handwriting. I'm sorry. Section 38. This is on page 86. What we would have in the December 1 letter now with the removal of with the property classifications, we set one statewide rate, right, and then adjusted it for the different classifications. Now you're getting recommendations for both that homestead property tax rate and your non-homestead tax rate. You can still get the yield, and you make the same assumptions as before. We've already talked about the tax rate transition. So this is what you're seeing here in section 39. And the real thing to see, I think, is the homestead exemption. This is consistent with what Julia has modeled, but you haven't seen the language yet. So, looking at the actual changes start here on page 95. This is your repeal of the property tax credit, replacing with homestead exemption. instead of having narrative descriptions for each subdivision saying, if you're this, then you get that, I just created tables, so you can just look at the table. So claimant, eligible, household income doesn't exceed 100K. If you fall into this income bracket, you get this percentage exemption against, for these folks, the first 425,000 in house site value. And this is aligning with that scenario D that you saw in the modeling. Then you see, once you hit 50K, the exception is available against the first 400K instead of first 25. So this is just what you've seen in scenario D,
Yeah,
but it's implemented.
Yeah, not color.
Except, frankly, I think that's what I have. I'm sure that I'm causing whiplash if I scroll as much. So, I'm not sure if you guys want other things from me, if you want things from Beth or others.
Just,
Yeah.
this bill, if I remember correctly, had a tremendous number of effective dates.
Yes,
Oh.
yes,
Effective dates.
Yes,
And if we,
I can jump to
like
that.
more than I've ever seen in a bill before, like ever.
Well, you haven't seen our healthcare bills.
Oh, okay.
491.
It makes for,
Apparently there's a email from the government.
very simple drafting, stuff like that.
Oh, really? Sure.
Just a minute. Minus.
Okay, that should be effective dates. Here we go. I'm at the very end of the bill, page 122. On passage, you have a number of the education policy pieces come online, right? Intent, change to that commission, school district boundary task force you're setting up. Then sets of reports that you're tasked for later this year. So your transportation reimbursement guidelines, inflationary measures, that ed fund delay, which needs to go into effect prior to that July date in this summer. Report back from the tax department. They're also going to provide that report on the homestead exemption, right, in consultation with JFO. All of the things that you need reports for, they're effective on passage, setting up the process on July 125, and it will be harder for me to speak to these pieces because they're outside of the scope. But some of the earlier education fund pieces, I think what you guys have really touched are down here, July 127. This is the rollout of foundation formula that's proposed. So your tuition update. And then all of the transition to foundation formula pieces we just talked about. So that Title 16 state funding of public education chapter, those pieces and the educational opportunity payment transition would come online that July 27. Same for, at the same time, you will have the transition of that statewide tax and your supplemental spending tax. Plus you have that transition for the tax rates, right? Going up and down for those. Property tax credit repeal and the creation of the homestead exemption online at the same time. So basically everything I had talked about comes online July 127.
One goes away and one comes.
Here is the kind of novel language you're seeing for that PTE weight. Section 25 to take effect July 127, provided that legislation that amends chapter 37 of Title 16 to reflect the governance and policy assumptions underlying that CTE weight has been enacted. So
What are the
only,
governance and policy assumptions underlying that CTE weight?
what are they?
What are they?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, but how can you
That's why
refer
the-
to something that's not an actual thing?
That's the placeholder.
That makes no sense. It makes no sense. People are gonna be like, what are the governance and policy assumptions underlying the CTE weight? Like I just did.
They don't exist.
They don't exist. What are they? Cause it's not empirically based.
No,
It's, there's nothing. This
it
makes no
is-
sense.
It is holding a place until we make a decision
Maybe we should say.
on CTE. It will depend, I think, on the districts, and if there's a CTE in the district, here's the district. I don't know.
Here's just again, I'm not familiar with the first sections of the bill, but I'm looking to the intent section at the start. So very first page of the bill. Intent of the General Assembly to, in the 2026 section, enact
Okay.
updates to career and technical education governance systems that are reflective of the larger public education governance transformation.
So it's waiting on that, right?
it's waiting on the intent.
No, it's waiting on us to do that updated.
That's not how you calculate a weight. I'll just stop
I
talking
know.
because none of this makes any sense to me. It's, yeah, I don't
Okay,
even know what to say anymore.
committees. What is your pleasure?
Before I leave, it would be helpful for me and the people in the back to hear. It would be awesome if we could see a side-by-side comparison, of the house base and weights and what we have passed today. Is that possible to do? I mean, it doesn't have to actually be side-by-side, but could you pull one up and then pull the other? So
I mean, I can do that thing. I just don't know what your timeline. is
Yeah,
for that.
we
But I
can't
can
do it
that, but
today. We've
I can
got,
stay late. John, you and
I
I.
could show you what the differences are.
Yeah.
Okay,
okay,
all right.
I'm gonna ask for one before this goes to the floor and a section by section, but committee, we've been through it. What is your pleasure?
Ready to vote.
Is that a motion?
I move that we,
You might share it again.
find this draft. Thank you. I move that we find this draft 2.1 on House Bill 454 favorable.
Okay, we have Senator Beck moved that we approve H 454, and I'm not seeing the number in front of me anymore, but discussion committee.
This is a very important vote, right?
I do want to just,
Go ahead, Senator Chipman.
Didn't mean to steal the floor, so I can. This is a very important vote for the future of Vermont. I've struggled a lot with it, so I don't like getting on grandstands or soapboxes, so that's not what I'm gonna do. But I think it's important for people that are interested in this topic to know why I'm voting yes right now. Voting yes right now because I think we made the finance aspects of this better. I do have concerns with the weights that were changed today because I don't feel like we dove into that topic. But I was as comfortable with what came over to Senate Ed as this, and I trust that more conversation will occur because this is not the final vote. And I will say that at the last thing, as much as I'm voting yes to get it out of committee today, I do want to be intellectually consistent, but I feel like I can still stand before the Senate and vote no, because I am leaning no on this bill in totality because of the macro concerns I have for what it will do to the education system in Vermont. That's where I am.
okay. Further discussion. Senator Hart.
I am voting no today and on the floor. I think we made a bad bill even worse. The House sent us a very comprehensive and logical and empirically based bill that included a lot of thought and a lot of research. And I didn't agree with all of the choices they made, but at least they were consistent. And we were not consistent. We were not empirically based. This bill will be devastating to our education system. It will not lower property taxes for people who need lower property taxes. It will create chaos. And it will not provide structural change that we need for our educational system, nor will it provide, as I said, the property tax relief that Vermonters have asked us to deliver. It is a sad day for public education, and it is hard for me. It has been hard for me to sit through this conversation as someone who has worked for much of my career on education policy and finance.
Senator Fu.
I'm really disappointed in the legislature. I know this process isn't completely finished yet, but whether you're Republican, whether you're Democrat, education is so foundational to everything, including bringing families into the state. And I know that that's a big concern of a lot of folks. You know, we want to build our workforce, we want to build our families, we want to sell homes, build homes, sell homes. This bill is going to be very detrimental to those goals and those ideals. And in a time of great uncertainty and frankly terror coming out of Washington DC. The fact that we are taking on this bill and this amount of work in frankly kind of a slipshod manner is very, very troubling to me. I thank the people who work so hard on doing all of the modeling, on running the numbers, on writing the bill. It was a huge effort and I thank you so much. But I am very, very disheartened that this is, you know, the best and brightest of Vermont doing this work. I'm really sad and I apologize to my voters and my constituents.
To further discussion.
I think this is a good start. I think we'll find out in 26 if there are things that we wish we had done differently, maybe even beyond that, and I look forward to that work. I think we can say that we're working hard to make sure every kid gets a high quality education, but that we also heard our taxpayers in the November election. And I don't think it satisfies either one of those groups perfectly, but I think it moves the ball forward.
This is a bill in which everybody's been involved in it, regardless of which quote side they're on, is coming away somewhat or entirely disappointed. And I'm one of those people. I see parts of this that I don't like. I don't like the complexity. I don't like the lack of specificity in some cases. I have grave questions regarding some of the baseline numbers that we're starting with on one hand. On the other hand, I see that we have a system right now that isn't working. It isn't working well. It isn't working well for taxpayers, and I question whether it's working very well for kids. I don't have a whole lot of confidence that the numbers that we're basing a lot of decisions on in this particular bill are really based on reality. That said, I'm going to vote, at least for right now, in favor of this bill because I think it moves us forward. And I think there's sufficient space to be able to back up over the next year or two and reverse decisions that we've made that subsequent knowledge tells us were not the right decisions. But doing nothing is even a worse option. And doing nothing to retain what we have right now that we know is working is not a great idea, in my opinion. Things here that I would change from, and the list is almost too long to mention, but we've got to, I think, do something. I think we've got to move forward and recognize that we may turn around at some point in time, and indeed that some point in time may in fact be later than the final vote on this bill.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Or want to say anything?
I'm trying to get you out of here before.
Yeah, I know. I'll just say this vote for me is going to be a yes, and it's the start of a longer conversation that we're going to have as this evolves in the next few years. But I'll be very fit and start with Senator Chittenden.
Yep. That's it, yeah.
Oh, Senator Beck,
Yes.
Senator Gulick,
No,
Senator Brock,
Yes.
Senator Hardy,
No,
Senator Meadows, yes. Senator Cummings,
Yes,
5-2-0.
okay. I will report that, but I think I'm gonna ask members to report sections. So, we could work that out. But I think with that, thank you, everyone. This has been hard work. I don't think anyone feels really good. I can't remember ever feeling as bad about a vote as I do on this one, but it will move us forward. I remember a year ago. In here at 11 o'clock, not here, upstairs at 11 o'clock at night, trying to get that 18% down. And I think this will at least continue the conversation. Okay.